Right now, as you watch this video, approximately 20% of the world's oil passes through a waterway narrower than the English Channel. A choke point so strategically vital that whoever controls it holds a knife to the throat of the global economy. A passage where a single mine, a single missile, a single miscalculation could trigger the worst energy crisis in human history. The Strait of Hormuz. You've heard the name on the news. You've seen the maps with the dramatic red arrows. You've absorbed the narrative that Western naval power keeps this passage open, that Iran is an irrational threat, that our energy security depends on military dominance of waters 12,000 kilometers from American shores. Every element of that narrative is a lie, not a simplification, not a matter of perspective. A lie, repeated so often by so many sources that it feels like background truth, like geography, like physics. Over the next 16 minutes, I'm going to dismantle 20 of those lies. I'm going to show you what the Strait of Hormuz actually is, who actually controls it, and why the story you've been told serves interests that have nothing to do with your energy security or your safety. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most dangerous waterway on Earth is dangerous precisely because of the lies we've been told about it. Subscribe now. This is information that changes how you see every headline about the Middle East for the rest of your life. Lie number 1. The Strait of Hormuz is international waters that belong to no nation. Look at a map. The strait at its narrowest point is only 33 kilometers wide. Shipping lanes pass through waters that are legally the territorial seas of Iran and Oman. Every tanker transiting the strait enters Iranian territorial waters. International law grants the right of transit passage through straits used for international navigation. But transit passage is not the same as international waters. Iran has legal jurisdiction over these waters. The legal framework that governs the strait gives coastal states significant rights that Western media never mentions. When American warships transit the strait, they're not patrolling international waters. They're exercising transit rights through another nation's territory. The framing matters because it shapes who appears as aggressor and who appears as defender. Lie number 2. Iran has no legitimate security concerns in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States maintains approximately 40 military installations within striking distance of Iran. The Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain sits less than 300 kilometers from Iranian shores. American aircraft carriers conduct operations in the Persian Gulf, which Iran calls the Arabian Gulf, continuously. Imagine Chinese aircraft carriers conducting permanent operations in the Gulf of Mexico, while China maintained 40 military bases in Canada and the Caribbean. Any nation would consider this an existential threat. Iran's defensive posture in the strait isn't paranoia. It's a rational response to being surrounded by hostile military infrastructure. The media presents Iranian military activity as aggression. It's actually the behavior of a nation that has watched the United States invade 2 of its neighbors within the past 25 years. Lie number 3. The U.S. Navy guarantees safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. In 1988, the USS Vincennes shot down Iran Air Flight 655, a civilian Airbus carrying 290 passengers, including 66 children. The United States never formally apologized. The captain received a medal. In 2016, Iran captured 2 American naval vessels and 10 sailors who had drifted into Iranian waters, holding them briefly before release. American ships in the strait regularly experience GPS jamming, communications interference, and close encounters with Iranian fast boats. The reality is that the Persian Gulf is one of the most contested naval environments on Earth. The U.S. Navy's presence doesn't guarantee safety. It guarantees tension. Every American vessel in those waters is simultaneously a projection of power and a potential target in a conflict neither side can fully control. Lie number 4. Iran couldn't actually close the Strait of Hormuz even if it wanted to. Iran possesses between 2,000 and 6,000 naval mines. The exact number is classified. Modern mines are sophisticated weapons that can distinguish between ship types, activate on command, and evade minesweeping operations. During the Iran-Iraq War, a single Iranian mine nearly sank the USS Samuel B. Roberts. Clearing that mine threat took months. Iran's anti-ship missile arsenal includes weapons that can strike targets throughout the Persian Gulf. Coastal defense batteries line hundreds of kilometers of Iranian shoreline. Fast attack boats armed with missiles and torpedoes number in the hundreds. Could the United States eventually reopen the strait after an Iranian closure? Probably. But eventually could mean weeks or months. Global oil markets operate on margins of hours. A 2-week closure would trigger economic chaos that would make the 2008 financial crisis look mild. Line number 5. Western naval power can neutralize Iran's ability to threaten shipping. The Persian Gulf is a bathtub. It averages only 50 meters in depth. It's approximately 1,000 kilometers long and 300 kilometers wide at its widest point. Every vessel inside it is within range of Iranian land-based missiles. Modern anti-ship missiles travel at speeds that give defenders seconds to react. American aircraft carriers, despite their power, are extraordinarily vulnerable in confined waters where maneuver room is limited and missile flight times are short. Military analysts have wargamed Persian Gulf conflicts for decades. The consistent finding is that the initial days of any conflict would involve significant American losses. Power projection works differently when the adversary can reach you from the shore. Line number 6. Oil tankers are protected by international law, and Iran would never attack commercial shipping. During the tanker war phase of the Iran-Iraq War, between 1984 and 1988, approximately 500 merchant vessels were attacked in the Persian Gulf. Both Iran and Iraq struck tankers serving their enemies' oil trade. The world's oil supply was disrupted for years. In 2019, tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman in incidents that remain disputed. In 2024, and now in 2026, Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping have demonstrated that non-state actors aligned with Iran can disrupt maritime commerce with relative ease. International law doesn't protect tankers. Geography protects tankers when it favors defenders and endangers them when it doesn't. The Strait of Hormuz is geography that favors Iran. Line number 7. America's interest in the Strait of Hormuz is about protecting global energy supplies for everyone's benefit. The United States became a net petroleum exporter in 2020. American energy independence has increased dramatically over the past 15 years. The United States doesn't need Persian Gulf oil for domestic consumption. So why maintain this massive military presence? Because controlling the strait means controlling the energy supplies of China, Japan, South Korea, India, and Europe. Countries that depend on Gulf oil must maintain relationships with the power that guarantees its flow. The strait isn't about American energy security. It's about American leverage over the energy security of rivals and allies alike. The military presence is a tool of geopolitical influence, not consumer protection. Line number 8. Iran's government is irrational and therefore unpredictable in its strait policy. Since 1979, Iran has never actually closed the Strait of Hormuz. Despite decades of threats, despite crippling sanctions, despite assassinations of its scientists and generals, despite cyber attacks on its infrastructure, Iran has maintained the flow of oil. Why? Because Iran itself exports oil through the strait. Because Iran's leadership understands that closure would trigger the very military confrontation they've spent 45 years avoiding. Iranian foreign policy has been remarkably consistent and strategically rational. They pursue their interests, defend their sovereignty, and support regional allies exactly as any nation in their position would. The irrational Iran narrative serves to justify military postures that would seem aggressive if applied to a rational actor. We're at the halfway point, and you're starting to see how these lies interconnect. Each one props up the others. Each one makes the next one seem more plausible. If you're finding this valuable, subscribe now. The remaining lies cut even deeper. Line number 9. The 2026 crisis proves Iran is the aggressor in the Strait of Hormuz. Operation Epic Fury began on February 28, 2026, when Israel assassinated Iran's supreme leader. The Iranian response, including threats to the strait, came after that assassination. The sequence matters. The media coverage inverts it. Every headline about Iranian aggression in the strait omits the provocation that preceded it. Every analysis of the threat to oil supplies ignores who struck first. This isn't about defending Iran's government. It's about recognizing that the crisis narrative you're consuming is structured to make one side appear as the cause and the other as the response, when the actual sequence was the reverse. Lie number 10. Sanctions are a peaceful alternative to military action against Iran. Sanctions have devastated Iran's economy for decades. Inflation has destroyed savings. Medicine shortages have killed patients. Unemployment has gutted the middle class. Economic warfare is still warfare. It just kills more slowly and less visibly. When sanctions target a nation's ability to sell oil, they are specifically targeting that nation's economic survival. Iran's threats regarding the Strait of Hormuz are responses to economic warfare designed to strangle the country into submission. The media presents sanctions as the peaceful option and military action as the extreme option. Iranians experiencing sanctions don't experience them as peaceful. They experience them as slow-motion violence with a more respectable brand. Lie number 11. The Strait of Hormuz has always been a flashpoint because of Iranian hostility. Before 1979, Iran was an American ally. The Shah's government was installed by a CIA-backed coup in 1953 that overthrew Iran's democratically elected prime minister. For 26 years, Iran served Western interests in the region, including keeping the strait open for Western benefit. The strait became a flashpoint only after Iranians overthrew the Western-backed dictatorship. The hostility isn't ancient. It isn't cultural. It isn't religious. It's political. It dates to the moment Iranians reclaimed control of their country and their oil. Everything since has been consequence. Lie number 12. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy is a primitive force that couldn't seriously threaten modern warships. The IRGC Navy has spent 45 years preparing for asymmetric warfare in the Persian Gulf. Their doctrine specifically targets the vulnerabilities of larger, more sophisticated naval forces. Fast attack boats swarm in coordinated patterns designed to overwhelm defensive systems. Anti-ship missiles launch from mobile coastal batteries that relocate after firing. Many submarines operate in shallow waters where larger submarines cannot follow. This isn't a primitive force. It's a specialized force optimized for the specific environment where any conflict would occur. American naval doctrine was developed for blue water operations in open oceans. The Persian Gulf is neither blue water nor open. Home field advantage matters in warfare as much as in sports. Lie number 13. Mining the strait would harm Iran as much as anyone else because Iran exports through it. Iran has prepared for this scenario for decades. Alternative export routes through pipelines to the Caspian Sea and overland connections have been developed. Domestic refining capacity has increased to reduce dependence on fuel imports. Strategic reserves have been accumulated. Iran has also calculated that temporary self-harm might be acceptable if the harm to adversaries is greater. When your economy is already devastated by sanctions, the marginal cost of further disruption decreases. Iran has less to lose than the nations whose economies depend entirely on strait access. This asymmetry shapes the calculus in ways Western analysts often underestimate. Lie number 14. International minesweeping capabilities could quickly clear any Iranian mining of the strait. Modern mines can be programmed to activate after a delay, defeating initial sweeping operations. They can be set to target specific vessel types while ignoring minesweepers. They can be anchored at varying depths and positions to complicate clearance patterns. The strait's shipping lanes are narrow. Mines don't need to be everywhere. They just need to be somewhere, with the threat that they could be anywhere. Even after clearance operations declare the strait safe, insurance companies would charge war risk premiums that would spike shipping costs. The economic damage extends far beyond the physical threat. Doubt itself becomes a weapon. Lie number 15. American allies in the Gulf fully support U.S. policy toward Iran and the Strait. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have opened diplomatic channels to Iran in recent years. Oman has maintained relations with Iran throughout the entire post-1979 period and has often served as a mediator. Qatar shares a massive natural gas field with Iran and cannot afford permanent hostility. These nations live in the region. They would suffer the consequences of a full-scale war. They are hedging their bets, maintaining relationships with all sides, seeking to avoid becoming battlegrounds. The image of united Gulf opposition to Iran is a diplomatic fiction maintained for American audiences. The reality is far more nuanced. Line number 16. Control of the strait is about preventing one nation from dominating regional oil supplies. The United States already dominates regional oil supplies through its military presence. The Fifth Fleet exists precisely to ensure that American power determines who can and cannot access Gulf oil. When American officials warn about Iranian control of the strait, they're warning about losing control they already exercise. The concern isn't one nation dominating the strait. The concern is the wrong nation dominating it. The current arrangement, where American military power guarantees access on American terms, is framed as neutral international order. Any alternative is framed as dangerous nationalism. The language of order and chaos maps precisely onto the language of whose interests are served. Line number 17. Oil prices spike during strait tensions because of genuine supply disruption fears. Oil prices are set by futures markets where speculators trade contracts for oil that may never be physically delivered. During every strait crisis, traders bid up prices based on what might happen. The actual physical supply often remains unchanged. In some cases, prices spike even as tankers continue transiting without incident. Financial speculation on crisis creates its own profits independent of actual supply dynamics. Some actors benefit from strait tensions precisely because those tensions move prices in predictable directions. The relationship between crisis headlines and price movements creates incentives for amplifying every threat. Fear itself has become a tradable commodity. Line number 18. A military solution to strait security is possible if we commit sufficient resources. The geography doesn't change. Iran's coastline doesn't shrink. The Persian Gulf doesn't widen. No amount of military spending can alter the fundamental reality that Iran sits on one side of a narrow waterway through which the world's oil must pass. Military action might destroy Iranian military assets temporarily. It cannot destroy Iranian geography permanently. Any solution that doesn't address Iran's legitimate security concerns simply postpones the next crisis. Military thinking offers military solutions. But this is a geographic and political problem that military force can manage temporarily and never resolve permanently. Line number 19. The American public benefits from military control of the Strait of Hormuz. American taxpayers fund the Fifth Fleet, the bases, the aircraft carriers, the personnel, the operations. Hundreds of billions of dollars over decades. That money might have funded infrastructure, healthcare, education, or simply remained in taxpayers' pockets. The benefits of strait control flow to oil companies who profit from managed supply, to defense contractors who profit from permanent deployment, to financial interests who profit from petrodollar recycling. The costs are socialized. The benefits are privatized. This is not a public service. It's a wealth transfer mechanism disguised as national security. Line number 20. There is no alternative to the current confrontational posture in the Strait of Hormuz. For 45 years, the United States has pursued maximum pressure on Iran. Sanctions, isolation, military encirclement, covert operations, support for regime change. The result? Iran is more entrenched, more capable, and more aligned with American rivals than ever before. China now purchases Iranian oil in defiance of sanctions. Russia coordinates with Iran militarily. The maximum pressure strategy hasn't worked. It has achieved the opposite of its stated goals. Alternative approaches exist. Diplomatic normalization. Sanctions relief tied to verifiable agreements. Security arrangements that address Iranian concerns alongside Western concerns. Regional frameworks that reduce rather than escalate tensions. These alternatives are dismissed as naive or dangerous by the same voices who have presided over 45 years of policy failure. The current approach isn't the only option. It's simply the option that serves specific interests, regardless of outcomes. 20 lies. 20 bricks in the wall that separates you from understanding why the world's most important waterway remains perpetually on the edge of crisis. The Strait of Hormuz isn't a problem waiting for a solution. It's a managed tension that serves specific interests. Energy companies profit from supply uncertainty. Defense contractors profit from permanent deployment. Financial interests profit from petrodollar flows. Political interests profit from a perpetual enemy that justifies military budgets and interventionist foreign policy. What doesn't serve those interests is peace. What doesn't serve those interests is a diplomatic resolution that addresses all parties' concerns. What doesn't serve those interests is you understanding the geography, the history, and the economics clearly enough to question the narrative. The Strait of Hormuz is an oil trap, but not in the way you've been told. The trap isn't that Iran might close it. The trap is that the story you've been told about it locks you into supporting policies that benefit others at your expense. You're not the beneficiary of strait security. You're the funding mechanism. Every war that's been threatened over these waters, every crisis that's spiked your gas prices, every headline that's raised your fear, has transferred wealth and power from you to interests that depend on your continued belief in the lies I just dismantled. The strait is 33 kilometers wide, but the gap between what you've been told and what's actually true is far wider. Now you've crossed it. What you do with that knowledge is up to you, but you can't unknow it. You can't go back to consuming headlines about Iran and the strait without recognizing the machinery beneath them. That recognition is the beginning of thinking for yourself. Subscribe if you want more. Share this with someone still caught in the trap. And understand that every view is a small crack in the wall they built to keep you from seeing clearly. The oil trap is real, but it was never about oil. It was always about you.